What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. You already know we have to talk about more Nintendo products this year, and we're going to start it off. Actually, we already talked about the Nintendo Switch, but I really wanted to talk about the original Nintendo DS line, and I want to talk about the DSi's, the 3DS's, the DSi's XLs and all that, but we have to start off with the original, the OG, the original dual screen Nintendo DS. You guys already know. Now I do have a cold, so you might hear my nasal congestion be acting up, but it's not a big deal. Now the original Nintendo DS actually came out in 2004, so it's pretty crazy. This year it'll actually be turning 16 years old, but literally, I mean, I don't know what Nintendo was thinking. I mean, I love the Nintendo DS, don't get me wrong. I didn't like grow up with it. I eventually got it later on in my life, like I think like 3 years ago, that's when I picked it up, and I bought it literally for like $15 or $20 in the used market, which is pretty crazy. But this thing really hasn't aged too well with the way it looks. I mean, in terms of features and everything, it doesn't really look too good. But obviously the Nintendo DS Lite really fixed up a lot of what was pretty much wrong with the original Nintendo DS. Now when this thing came out, it brought so many awesome features that pretty much no portable console really had at the time. Now obviously we had the PSP that came out around this time too. I think it was around the same year or maybe a couple years later. And this was an awesome console that really switched up a lot of what we kind of thought about a portable gaming console. Now this thing brought two screens, which was really interesting. We didn't really see that in a lot of gaming consoles or even a lot of things at that time. I mean, this was 2004, you know what I mean? This wasn't like it was like 2013 or something like that. We didn't really have dual screens of anything, and the fact that Nintendo brought something like this at that time was really, really cool. We also had a touchscreen gaming console, which we really didn't have. I mean, we had the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Advance SP, even the Game Boy Micro, and those things didn't even have any like touch input or anything. And even a lot of phones at that time didn't really have any touch controls either, which is so insane. We still had a lot of flip phones and everything. So the fact this thing had at least one bottom touchscreen was awesome. We had a microphone, which is cool, and we also had a Wi-Fi, which was really, really important for the future of not only consoles and portable consoles, but also devices in general. And this thing had Wi-Fi, which is really cool. You could also wirelessly play against other people through your Nintendo DS, and those are some awesome characteristics to have in not only a portable gaming console, but for a device back in 2004. I mean, that's really, really crazy. Now looking around, I mean, besides the two screens, it's a pretty normal console. I mean, this was like 16 years ago, so it's kind of understandable. But at that time, I don't think really people were worried about the design too much and the practicality of it. They were more so worried about and just kind of excited about the games that were coming out for it, and also just the dual screen technology, and also like just the gameplay in general. I mean, most people were used to playing things on one screen. Now you have two screens, you know, twice the amount of gameplay room, which was really cool. And games had to utilize that second screen, you know, make it useful somehow, and that was really cool. Now, like I said, it brought a lot to the table, but it definitely was not perfect. It doesn't really look too good now. I mean, like I said, I don't think it's aged too well. I think it's built well, but it feels very cheap now. You know, it doesn't take the standard charger that the DS Lite and DSi take. The 3DS doesn't use it either. It takes the same charging port as the Game Boy Advance SP, which isn't a big deal. I mean, I think a lot of people who were upgrading from a Game Boy Advance SP were planning on buying a Nintendo DS, so that's, I guess, a really cool compatibility thing that the same charger used for would work on both of them. But also that was kind of a big deal, because if you were to switch to a DS Lite, you didn't necessarily get that charger, but at least they added a charger in the box, you know what I mean? With the Nintendo 2DS, you guys already know they took away adding a charger. It was either the 2DS or the 2DS XL. They didn't add the charger in the box, which is so dumb that makes no sense at all. But at least with the original Nintendo DS, Nintendo kept that charger in there, which is cool. But the really awesome thing though is that, and probably the biggest advantage for having a Nintendo DS in 2020, even the original one, is the amount of games for this thing. There's literally tens of billions of games for this thing. I think every single person has built a game for the Nintendo DS. So you'll realistically never run out of games, and even on top of that, you'll never run out of great games. The gaming selection, like I said, is crazy, and not only do you have the actual Nintendo DS gaming selection, so all those games as well, but you also have Game Boy Advance support as well. This thing had a Game Boy Advance slot, which was super, super cool, and a lot of people at that time were switching from their Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP to pick up a DS, so that kind of makes sense why they did that way. I think that was a super cool thing that they decided to do, and eventually with the DSi they took it out, which was really annoying, but at least the DS has that. And like I stated with the games, you can literally you can just pick any random 2 words and there will probably be a game like that. You can pick like grass leaf and there's going to be a game called grass leaf or some type of game like that. So that's a huge advantage for a DS. A lot of gaming consoles even at this time, like the Switch, the PS Vita, even what other gaming consoles, I don't even know, like all these gaming consoles, they have a lot of games and a lot of great games for sure, but the vast selection of these games are just not even close to the Nintendo DS, because the DS was out for so much longer than those games. Than those gaming consoles. Eventually the Switch will probably match up to the DS, but as of right now, dude, there's just so many games out for this thing. And what's really cool is that every time I go to GameStop, I don't really go to GameStop that often, but whenever I do go there, I still see like those huge little like glass swivel things that are like boxes that are just see-through glass, so you can see all those DS games they have in them. And that's really cool that people are still excited to go there and see them. There's usually at least like 2 or 3 people around it every time I go, and there's just so many games for those things, those little tiny cartridges. It's so crazy. It just really shocks me every time. And funny story, actually, before I picked up a DS, I think before I got a DS Lite as a birthday present, I used to think the game cards were actually SD cards, so I would just assume that you could just put an SD card in it, but no, that's not the case. They're full game cartridges. The thing with the DS games though, even though there was a vast selection of them, they weren't really necessarily like super graphically intensive. They weren't necessarily the best looking games, and especially compared to PSP games at the time, the Nintendo DS games weren't necessarily up to par with the graphics as PSPs or PS2s or Wii games even, but they're still super fun side-scrolling games for sure. For me, it's not necessarily the graphics all the time. It's more about like the overall gameplay and overall just, the story mode of the game. I like stories more than just the graphics, you know what I mean? So I'm not a huge gamer, but that's one thing I always liked. But even though that's all good and all, I'm just really not a fan of this specific body. The DS Lite has aged so incredibly well. The DS Lite still looks like a very current console, but the original Nintendo DS, it just doesn't really look that well. The DS Lite has brighter screens and just looks so much more like a classic device. The original Nintendo DS is just kind of like a weird looking device at the end of the day. It's not super ugly. I feel like it's still super important. That design still is kind of, a little bit here and there, but it's just kind of weird at the end of the day. Now, interesting fact, actually, I said this in the other videos too. All the Nintendo DS models sold more than 154 million consoles, making it actually the best handheld console. It beat the PSPs, the whatever consoles, the N-Gage, I think, I don't know. It beat all those things, and it's actually the second best-selling video console as well. It's just not the specific one, it's just all the DSs combined. So some people might say, oh, that's not fair, the DS, 3DS, and all this. Well, that's how they do it. I didn't tell them to do it that way. That's how they did it. So to answer the question that you guys all have been waiting for, should you buy the original Nintendo DS in 2020? Now, obviously, I'm going to say completely yes. It's a completely great classic thing. If you want to get it, who am I to tell you not to get it? I think it's a classic console for you to have in your collection. It's super cool. It's the OG Nintendo DS, you know what I mean? It's not supposed to be the perfect thing. It's supposed to be the first generation, and throughout iterations, it's going to get better and better. I allude the same thing to like the Samsung Galaxy Fold. That phone, the first one really messed up, but I think over time they'll eventually fix it, and someone's got to take chances. And with the Nintendo DS, I think Nintendo knocked it out of the park. I think they did a pretty decent job at it. I don't think it's perfect, but obviously if you want a better device, I think a DS Lite would be way better. The thing is, in the used market, a DS is still I think it's still like $20 or probably less than that, depending on how many games are included in that package. I'm usually looking on eBay. You can get a DS Lite or even a DSi for like $20, so there's really no point in getting the original one if you actually want to sit there and play the games. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. Even 3DSs are like $40, even less than $40. So if you really want to get a gaming console that you want to take with you, you can always go that route. Getting a 3DS or even a DSi, I think you'll have a better experience overall if you get those specific things. And like I said, I think I spent like $15 or $13 on this original Nintendo DS, which, like I said, it's a really cool thing. So it's definitely a cool thing to add to your collection. It's not perfect, it's not designed to be perfect, but it's really cool. And I'm so happy this thing, was the start of what the Nintendo DS line pretty pretty much brought. So I will be doing a review on the Nintendo DS Lite very soon, probably within the next week or so. So keep it locked down on the channel so you guys don't miss that. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it would mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those things are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.